I guess this is the Thursday, August 24th, 2023 Webster Town Board Workshop. Interestingly enough, we only have one item tonight. It's that special of an item.
Wow,
Yes.
that's so impressive.
And I just want to say that before I hand the baton off to Rick and Jean from Jean O'Connell Associates on their presentation of what their firm does, I just wanted to take a little trip down memory lane on this project the town has been endeavoring in for over a year now. Patty Cataldi, our deputy town supervisor, I think you were in the first meeting in early August 2022, where we had a think tank amongst about 10 key people in town government to say, look, we got a lot of things going on in this town in the next couple of years, major projects. We need a proactive strategy on how to identify and then apply for, and then if we are lucky enough to get awarded grants, manage the grants. And heretofore, the town government strategy on that was really when we hired the engineering firm to do the design of a municipal project, one of their ancillary services was to help us get grants. And so that was kind of the genesis of it. And Patty, I know you were at several of those meetings. It was interesting early on. Anytime you have a think tank and you're starting with a blank piece of paper, it's interesting. But as we moved forward, I think it was earlier this year, there was a request for proposal that was put out. I think a dozen to 14 firms proposed something to the town of how they saw they could help the town with this. A committee that we had, a subcommittee, vetted those applications and came down to 4 that presented at a workshop, I think back in June, maybe May. And because we said this is one of these things where we want to make sure we get it right, we kind of regrouped after we had the workshop and had 4 firms present. And within that regrouping and looking at this, one of the firms that had originally submitted an application was Jean O'Connell Associates. And I guess without further ado, we thought it was a good move to have Jean and Rick from Jean O'Connell Associates come in and do a presentation to the town board and to the community who is here live or watches this on what their firm does within the grant process, to see if maybe as we go forward it fits into the town's vision of identifying, applying, and managing grants. So there's my long preamble. Jean and Rick, I'll hand the baton to you guys.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Before I get down to business, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I have done this work for over 30 years, but I've had 3 lives. And the first one, I was a school teacher, and I taught art for many years, and I taught senior citizen painting in the town and all kinds of things like that. And then my second life, I was the first director of the Clarence Senior Center and moved into a brand-new building that had absolutely nothing in it but a desk for me, and the place was empty. It was built with community development funds. And I came in June, and for 6 months, my salary and what I had to spend was $5,000 for 6 months. So I learned how to get very inventive and how to scam nickels out of the pop machine, hold various sundry things like flea markets and things like that so we could exist. And 5 years later, maybe in the 4th year, I hired a grant writer there to work with me. And he used to come in all the time with his pile of grants and say, and I'd criticize something and he'd say, oh, Jean, you're so good at this, you ought to come work for me. So they wouldn't make my job full-time at the senior center, and it certainly was a full-time job. I was staying many hours past the 20. And so I said, okay, let's go. And so I resigned, and I resigned after 5 years of having 2,000 members, 200 volunteers, an outreach program. I started Meals on Wheels, and everything was great there. Had a volunteer party. They loved me, but I felt like I needed something more. So I went to work for him and found out he didn't really know much about grant writing. He had reviewed grants in the service, but really, he was starting out too. But he was a great salesman, and he could sell you anything, so I believed him. So anyways, I decided, well, I said it now, I might as well keep going. So basically, I learned how to do this on my own. And what he knew was I came from a very political family. My uncle was actually a congressman at one point. So I was used to politics. My father was the town chairman in our town. They used to have secret meetings in our spare bedroom, and, so I knew a lot about politics, and he didn't really know much about it at all. So he said, Jean, why don't you do municipal work? I have never done any of that. I only do not-for-profits. So I started out with him the first day. We went to 3 towns and never landed any of them. So I left the next time, and I went by myself, and the first client I talked to, I signed up, and that was the beginning of this. And why I like it is because there are so many places, just like yours, that never really got into grant writing. They hit and miss, somebody comes in, writes a grant, but it's not a whole process that keeps going on. And so I decided that's how it had to be. So when I left him, I left with no clients, and I had 5 clients at the time. One person can do about 5 clients, and you're killing yourself. So I left, and I managed to re-sign 4 of them. So I started again. And when I got to 5 or 6, I said, what am I going to do? I got to hire people. If I want to serve these people, which I do, I've got to find a way. So that's how I started my business. And it's a New York State woman-owned business, and I have survived all these years in that business. And I've come to love it. I love what I do. Every day is interesting because I deal with all kinds of wonderful people, like your supervisor here, who loves to chat me up, and I like to chat people up too, so it's okay. So that's how I started, and grew the business and kept getting employees and paying them. So this is a real business where I pay taxes on them, I pay Social Security on them. They are not contracted consultants, they are my employees. And so then this man now, over here, Mr. Richard Manguso, he is my office manager, and he was looking for something to do, so I'd like him to tell about himself.
Sure. So for many years, I was the business administrator for the Clarence schools. And then I just pretty much wanted a change. And then I came here. But being the business administrator, I naturally, we had 800 employees, we had a $100 million budget. So the business end of O'Connell is something that is very easy for me to take care of. Grants for the school district, my office was in charge of researching grants, getting grants for the school district. Obviously, we had to write the grants, and we had to run the grants. So I would say in any of those years, we probably had $5 million worth of grants. When COVID came, that quadrupled, and all the grants that we had to run and administer, apply for, and make sure that we had perfect compliance with, just grew and grew. And so it gave me quite a good background to come here and do this.
Unfortunately, since he had such a great budget where he loves to pay my employees a lot of money. So that is a little problem that I have.
She wants me to pay him the $5,000 for 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah, that might be great. But anyways, so we're here tonight to talk about grant writing, and I know you've heard many people speak to you about it, so I won't keep boring you by repeating the same old things. I think it would be good if Rick maybe talked about the way we work versus what you heard before, because I did listen to it all, so I know. Okay.
Sure. We did go through and listen to the presentations, and a lot of what they all said that was the same, we won't repeat. We have a staff of 6 people, and our crew will research grants for every entity that's out there. We have a huge database of grants that we have done in the past, but we have a huge database of funding agencies and what can get funded and for who. disadvantaged communities. You're not a disadvantaged community. You know, so we don't spend time looking for those grants for you. We do know all the political players in every area. We get to know them very closely so that we can do SAM grants and we can get the maximum funding for you. You know, we're in the middle of some DEC grants. We're in the middle of getting some electric charging stations for a lot of people. We just submitted at the end of July the large state consolidated funding applications are due. So, you know, for pretty much every one of our municipal clients, we submitted at least one or two large grants. We've submitted one, actually a $10 million one for your neighbor, East Rochester. So we go through all of those. Constant communication with, number one, a liaison that typically you'll appoint, but our meetings for needs assessment in the very beginning are critical. You probably have 12 to 15 department heads. Those department heads we will meet with separately, get their wish list. Then we will meet with, supervisor to go through the wish list, make sure that everything that we see and the timeframes that we see them go along with your master plan.
How old's your master plan?
Well, it's.
Old.
I got it.
Which leads me,
It's not a teenager yet. No, it is a teenager, isn't it?
which leads me probably to the most important thing you can do, and that's plan. Planning is so important to most of these things. They just love it when you can quote a plan. And the more planning you do, the better. Rick gave you attachments here that have some of our projects on it. Just turn to the one that says Seneca Falls. I worked there for probably,
Look at that right now, 'cause actually, I'm the project manager for this project on the fourth floor.
on which
So I was
one,
gonna-
pardon?
On the fourth floor, US ceilings. I'm the project manager for
Oh, okay.
this. We're doing shiplap and drywall on the fourth floor. So I was gonna ask you about this project, the grant.
Okay, well, when I talked about planning, Seneca Falls, I started there with a planner and got him to not only spiff up their comprehensive plan, but we did a economic development plan. There were a couple other ones, and when you look at this page, these are all things that happened there because there were plans to back them up. You can see that on the waterfront, the little, whatever you'd call it, gazebo, whatever, that was a New York State Department of Transportation project where we did the sidewalks and things like that, and it was like, $812,000. We did, going down the page, we did Main Street grant, about 3 of them. This is just one of them. And then the next one is a Department of State Canal grant where we put out docks and things like that. The bottom one is the National Women's Hall of Fame, which I applied for a $2.5 million grant through Restore, and it had to go through the town. It couldn't go through them. And so they got that, and that was the beginning of their converting this factory building to the National Women's Hall of Fame. And today, we still do all their grants administration, so we're pretty familiar with that project, but that was something that built on this original grant that was from the town. So if you want to go back, and you can see that on the first page is the Riviera Theater, that's in North Tonawanda, and that is, what we did there was a historic preservation grant, and it allowed us to fix up the front of it and put the bright lights on that and make it really wonderful. And I was just eating there a couple of days ago, not in the theater, but down the street, and I could see the thing is so great and it looks so wonderful. And now I guess they're going to start really doing their other renovation. But that's how it all started, and it really has added to their little downtown. The next one is from the town of Whitestown, and that is a perfect example of why you need someone like us. Because when this program first came out, this first year, And I always say, if it's new, try it, if it fits the guidelines, because they don't really know what they're looking for the first year either, and maybe you'll be lucky, but, so I always encourage my clients to try. So this was the first year of the program, and they got a Bridge New York grant for $1.4 million, and this bridge was flagged, so I knew when it was flagged that it was one they wanted to do. So those are the kinds of things, the knowledge that we have that helps you. So I can either say, hey, you got a great project because your bridge was flagged, or, don't waste your time because they got all those with flags ahead of them. And when I drive down the thruway tonight and look at some of them, I see them. The next one is the Iyer Building, and that's in East Rochester, and that's where they now have their village town hall. And this is an example of lots of grants getting to the end, okay? It wasn't just one thing. And you can see that it used to be the Xerox building, they gave it to them. And then they ripped down the village hall next to it, which, don't tell Marty I said this, but really was a very ugly village hall, and he would tell you that too. So I hope he doesn't watch this. Anyways, and so this started out with them getting that building donated, and then the downstairs is all commercial retail, and then the upstairs is all their office buildings. And we got them money to do all kinds of things like their records room and their libraries and their senior center. There's all kinds of things going on in there. And we just got him a new elevator because whoever designed it had a teensy little elevator that nobody could even get upstairs and downstairs if there was an emergency. So he's been harping about that forever, so that's finally coming to fruition too. So it was a combination of things that got that done. So many times it is. The last one that I brought along was the Mossy Bank Park in the Village of Bath. Probably in my mind, and I've been in a lot of parks over 30 years, the most beautiful park I was ever in. And it's not in the village. It sits up on a bluff overlooking the expressways below, and you have to sort of wind up there to get there. And it's a really beautiful, secluded place. But if you look at that little building in the left, that was the existing bathroom, which was quite ugly. And if you look at the right, there's the $1 million bathroom. I think at the time cost like $300 and some thousand to put it in. Yeah, 320. Oh, that was the whole grant. We got the swing sets and some other trail things to walk around, exercise trails. So sometimes these things cost a lot more than they thought. They thought, oh, this little restroom's going to cost $100,000. I said, no. And it's absolutely gorgeous. It's like a gorgeous one that's brand new on the thruway or something. It looks wonderful. But these are the kinds of things that we've done. I mean, you name it. I've been in a sewer plant. I've been in lots of dirty records rooms. I've been all over. And the thing is, you could hire an engineering firm, but they're just interested in engineering work. We will do everything. If your library needs something, if your youth people need something, the police, whoever, you name it, we've written it. So that's the important part of what we do. And it's key to continue, you can't just stop and start grant writing. It doesn't work that way. Because a lot of it is cyclical, so we'll know when it's going to happen. And we'll know if you don't have something like a plan or an updated comprehensive plan or things like that. It's really important to get those things in order, or an engineering concept drawing, or, prices, you name it. There are things we need from other people. We're dependent on people to give us information. We can write the story, but we can't invent whatever it is you need. So we always like to have, people that'll be willing to help us, and we've worked with many engineering firms and all kinds of people, so it's not a problem. That's what we do.
We also know what grants need special administration. Some grants, and it's not contingent on the size of the grant. You might get a $5 million grant that it's going to be easy. You're not going to need our help to administrate. You might, we're in the middle of renovating a park for one of our clients. It's a $380,000 grant. We're going to spend a lot of time helping them administer that grant. There's too many facets to it, too many bids that have to go out, too much paperwork for ADA compliance and all those other things. So we're going to be working with them quite a bit. But we will know up front typically how much work and what it will entail when we write the grant and then at the award time.
Yeah, so sometimes there is money in the grant, not always, but sometimes for the administration.
There's money in the grant for the administration of it.
Yes,
Okay.
Sometimes, not always,
Yeah.
but certain ones, yes.
And it does help because being a certified Wilmot business, you meet the state criteria for a lot of that.
Yeah, you can count us. When they tell you you have 30%, whatever, we can be the 15%, half of it, or whatever, so. Would you like to ask us some questions now that you've heard most of
I
it?
got a question,
Sure.
even though I'm not a voting member, but
Oh.
I am a citizen, but so I'm interested.
And
Do you apply for grants from private foundations as well? I mean,
we
do you-
can, if you have a 501c3, like sometimes the libraries have them, or recreation, or some of those things. I just had a call from one of the clients a couple days ago, and she was doing library construction. In fact, it was an elevator, and had already gone to the state library construction grant program, but that's a 50-50 match, so she's short 50 plus the price has increased. And she had already gotten a SAM grant from her, or no, she couldn't get a SAM grant, that's right, because you can't match federal with federal money. So she was looking for other money. I said, well, do you have a library, not-for-profit, Friends of the Library, something like that I could work with? She says, well, sort of. We have one, but we never filed the tax papers, and we really don't do anything with it. And I'm going, well, that's not going to work. But if you have a viable one that does function and does report, yes, we can go to the foundations and get money that way sometimes. So it would have been perfect had she done that, because we could have looked for things through the foundations. We do all kinds of work. I've represented all kinds of 501c3s over the years, so we know how to do it, yeah.
We do a lot of work with Firehouse, too.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to know? My goodness.
Okay, it's not so much a question. I could have sworn, Maria, help me out on this one. When we met with Rick and Jean 3 weeks ago, didn't we let them know that we're knee-deep, waist-deep in updating our master plan, our
I
comprehensive
don't
plan?
know if it came up, did it?
Really?
Well, we are. That's the good news.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Happy
And-
day
And we got the Smart Growth Grant for $100,000 from New York State
to do it.
to do it.
Okay.
And it's great, we got 100 grand, but we also are about 9 months behind our timeline because we can't move forward with advertising the RFP for consultants until the New York State Smart Growth people blessed it.
Oh,
And
okay.
we've somewhat been, I don't wanna say chasing them around, but,
Yeah.
yeah. But we're
Make-
getting there.
Yeah,
Um,
make sure when you do it that you put the pertinent projects in that you see down the line, because, I can refer to the things, but if the project's actually in there and I can say, look at page 5, it talks all about it, that really helps. So, be very visionary about the kinds of things you want to happen here in the next 5 years or so.
Yeah.
So, and once a year, once it's adopted, review it. And you can make addendums to it.
Yeah.
Any grant that you have currently, or you might write yourself, sometimes it's a quick application, we still can administer for you. It doesn't have to be a grant that we wrote for you.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when you said, Rick, that, you can get a $5 million grant and they give you the money and they say, you're done. And then you can get a $200,000 grant and they put you through a Baton Death March. I hate to say it, administering
no.
it. Paul Adams, our finance director, probably can attest to that first and foremost.
Yes, there's quite a bit of administration, beginning at MWBE, there's filings every quarter. There's quarterly reports,
Oh, yeah.
claims. We have Paula Friedman in my office who kind of heads that up, but she works with a number of people in engineering and community development to get the job done.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's
And-
mind-boggling. And it's so funny because, smaller towns such as yours, less than yours, they think, oh, we're going to get the check tomorrow and then we're going to go spend it. And I go, no, it doesn't work that way. It's like, they're very, the smaller they are, the harder it is for them to realize that. But,
Yeah.
and it's really hard sometimes to stop them from doing something before they should do it too. So that's why when we administer it, we keep our eyes on it so that if anything's happening and we say, they always want to start before they have a signed contract. No, you can't do that, so we sort of,
Yeah, it's amazing, a lot of projects that do get started with no signed contracts.
Right.
We've experienced that where I work, yes.
yeah. So we're very good at making them stop.
It's interesting, you had said earlier that you watched the video of the workshop 2 or 3 months ago where the 4 finalists from our vetting process, if you want to call it, presented. And we had some laughs on it when we got together with you 3 weeks ago, is that and it made sense, we gave them all the same project.
Yeah.
And it was our Sandbar Park Phase 2, so at least it would be easier to compare apples to apples on how they operate. Even though this is a professional service, it's very difficult to analyze what you're getting. We're not buying a product. You know what I
Right.
mean? That is, we're buying this. This firm charges me $1, this firm charges me 50 cents. Kind of easy. I take the firm that's 50 cents. In this, because it is, and I go back to a year ago where we had a think tank on this, about how we're gonna go about this. Heretofore, we've had engineering firms with their ancillary business do this for us. I don't think they've charged us for
No,
us
they
because
charged you when they got the job and put it in there, and you never knew what they charged, yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. So this is, the fact that the 4 finalists presented, you did say that the one that stuck out to you was the same one that at least the vetting committee or whatever had chosen.
Yeah,
Similar to your firm in that they are solely doing grants. It's not an ancillary
Right.
division of their business that feeds the core business of engineering. But that, what you said earlier, when you were a one-person shop, Gene, you really can only manage 4 or 5 clients.
Correct.
And then you're out of bandwidth. I think that person in that firm is experiencing that right now.
absolutely, I know she is, I could tell by what she said, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because besides the fact that I got a couple calls from people I know who utilize your services who said you should really take a serious look at Gene O'Connell Associates. The fact that your structure seemed to appeal to what we're trying to do, but you had grown it so it's not all you.
Right,
Was appealing, but the thing that the town government has never experienced before, like you said, it's built into the engineer's pricing, you just don't know it, is that if we take a firm that is not an engineering firm, such as yours, well, that there's a contract and there's a pricing model for that. I don't want to get into too much detail on that tonight, but your model, if I remember correctly, is an annual, monthly fee, annual fee,
Right.
whatever, and within that is the identification and application for grants. The separate charges are if the town decides we'd like you to manage that grant.
right,
And heretofore, we've never had the option of having
No.
a firm manage a grant. And I don't want to speak for Paul and some of the other people like Josh and Maria and whatever, but some of these grants, the management of them is very difficult. And I would imagine if some of the grants have a component in them where you can get administration monies in them,
correct.
I don't think if we're administrating our own grants, we could get that money.
Yes, you could.
Really? How would we quantify managing our own grants?
Well, you'd have to go through a process, and they'd have to okay it. But you don't want to do that, you want me to do it.
Right, and
He
I just,
does.
Paul, I don't, and I go with the most recent one, which has been, it's great. We got the DEC forestry grant to buy 28 acres.
Uh-huh. I don't know if that one had any administration in it, because that was new last year.
No idea.
Yeah.
But I know that.
But like Main Street,
It's been a-
Main Street
it's been a
grant has
tough
it in.
administration, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've earned that 285,000.
Yeah, the Main Street grant is one of them that has it in, and that's probably the most painful one of all, because it's a conglomeration of buildings that they all want something, so they treat each building as a separate grant, actually. And that is like tear your hair out time. And I'm sure that a lot of them probably never got closed out, because if someone didn't know what they were doing, it was very painful.
Also, administration doesn't have to be an all or nothing. If your office is doing certain things, but you want assistance on some of it, we're able to do that.
Yeah, I-
Or you can just say,
Take it.
no, I don't want to be bothered with this at all, and we just do everything.
I think we would supplement for certain grants.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's an appealing option that heretofore we have not had.
Right, never had it.
So,
And when I first started, I didn't do that. And then I realized what was happening was all these people had gotten my money and they were not doing anything with it. And I went, oh my goodness, I gotta do the other end too, or this is gonna look really bad the next time they go after something.
Yeah, I mean, we get a grant award for somebody, and because they don't follow through, and there are steps when you get the award, and a lot of those steps are time sensitive. That by 30 days you have to do this, and by 90 days you have to do that, just to make the award viable. And too many clients just let it go, thinking that kind of thing. Well, they're gonna send me a check, and then we'll figure it out.
Yeah, you get bombarded with emails.
Oh, yeah.
With requests, and I
Yeah.
think the tendency is just
I'll get
push
to
it
it.
off and you forget
Sure.
about it.
I gave you
stay
a
on
list
top
of
of it.
3 towns that are similar in size to yours on this paper, so you can sort of see. Town of Tonawanda, we do all of their grants administration. When we got that bid, won that bid, they had had a previous grant writer who died suddenly, and she was actually someone that I had taught to grant write. But she was doing all their administration too, but they didn't know what she was doing. So everything was like at her place. None of it was with the town. And I don't work that way, you know? When we get something done, you get the copy, you have it, you know what we're up to. And it was like a nightmare for them to straighten that all out. But now we're in a good place where they know that we're the guys to go to. And I'm telling you, they've been a great client. I love the supervisor. He's a wonderful person. He knows what his town is up to. It's great. Now, the next one, Town of Orchard Park, didn't have us do their grants administration. But all of a sudden, they realized they were in trouble. So guess who's doing it now? And the other one on the bottom is fairly new, so they will need it when it happens, but they just signed on, so. But that'll give you an idea of some of them.
well, it was, once again, Maria and I got the advantage 3 weeks ago when we sat down with you in the meeting that I thought maybe because you're, in Clarence and in Buffalo area,
Yeah.
that, maybe you just don't have any clients that are outside of there. And this package shows, well, I know you have East Rochester.
Yeah.
And they give you a glowing recommendation. This is Westchester County.
Yeah, well, we have about 4 or 5 down that way.
You did a Bath, Seneca Falls. I mean,
Yeah, we've been all over the state.
Yeah.
It's- And now since Zoom happened, I mean, you're close, to me, you're around the corner. But Westchester, we Zoom them whenever they say a quarter, whenever they want to talk to us. We
Yeah.
talk projects that way, and it works out really well. In fact, a few of them I've been hired on Zoom, so it's a new world. That's the only good thing that came out of COVID, Zoom, so, yeah. And it was very hard, I'll be honest, keeping my business together when COVID hit, because what do? I work with the government. What was the government doing? Nothing. So to survive that and get through it was really a hard process, but we're back on track now and happy to be there, so.
Well, I want to tell you and certainly if there's more questions and all that, I don't want to jump to conclusions here, but when Maria and I sat down with Rick and Jean 3 weeks ago, we said, well, let's compartmentalizing this process. Let's have you in on August 24th. You can present to the board, they can ask you questions, get to know what your product offering is, all that. As we go through September, I want to make sure the board has an idea of the economics of this. When we had the final 4 people come in 3 months ago, we never got to that point.
Okay.
All right, it was more, what do you think? What was your feel about these places? We had a subcommittee that was kind of vetting that, and then we were gonna get into that part of it, the economics. I think the town board knew that it was gonna be very different from when we have an engineering firm get our WIA grants, when they're doing millions of dollars of soft costs, design and all that. As you said, Gene, it's built in, right? So, that's what I'd like to see, the September timeframe, the interaction that I have with the board on this, with Paul Adams, our finance chair. I know Maria, she has a background, and we've also sent her to some grant writing schools, knowing that she could be a key person for the town, for any firm that we hire or retain on this. So if everything looks good and, we get through all of that, it's possible that as we get into October, we might be looking at resolution to enter into the engagement, whatever that is.
Yeah, you can start a
3 month, 6
contract the
month,
first of
year,
any month, the first of any month. So October 1st, that would be fine.
Well,
November 1st, just letting grants pass by,
realistic,
you know.
and I gotta tell you something, I think she's hilarious. all right? So I'm showing my bias. I would like to kind of work with her, but you know what? There's other considerations
That's right.
that we have to, realistically, I don't know, what is the first and third Thursday of October, resolution meetings? Is it October 2nd and 16th, or is it October?
The other thing I might add is
No, 5th and 19th.
The 5th and 9th.
5th and
5th and
19th.
19th.
Those are more realistic for when there would be a resolution to enter into a contract and authorize.
Sure, the 5th, I
but-
can just, start working, you can just backdate it to the 1st, that's no problem. What I
think
want
you're
to say, though, is I do write contracts for 2 years because, being realistic, I could put something in the first year and it's still into the second year before you even find out about it.
Yeah.
And when I do that, if you want to do that, then I keep the price the same for 2 years,
Yep.
so,
And like I said, without getting into much details,
Yeah.
it really is, foundational to all this is, if the town board decides to do this, the known will be the contract for the 2 years and the expense. The unknown is if we'll ever get anything out of it. That's just a reality.
yeah.
We look at presentations and we look at what you've gotten in the past, and we know, that's what the town board, this is something we've never done before with a grant firm. And when we knew this, when we sat down a year ago and started the think tank on it, as we were progressing through that, I think it fell off pretty quickly, Patty, that this is not like those attorneys that you see, hey, we don't get paid unless you get paid.
paid.
We vetted this contingency aspect of like,
No.
hey.
I've got all those hungry mouths at the office to feed. If I waited
Right,
for that,
that's right.
they would not be there, no.
Well-
So that's why we have contracts, yeah. You have to know what your expenses are.
Yes.
So,
So that'll be something that, the board will be going back and forth with, in September, and I'll keep in communication with you in as real time as I can, because the board might have questions.
Okay, send
And I
them
want
our way.
to avail them, and I'm sure you'll be okay, openly, where they can contact you with those
Sure.
questions or whatever. That's our best way to get to October 5th and be able to make an educated decision on if we do that, a resolution, and retain Gene O'Connell Associates.
And I might just add that, I'm working for you. I'm not an engineering firm looking for money for my firm. Whatever I do for you. And when you see these projects that I've done, I'm as proud of them knowing that I helped them. And that's what's kept me going all this time, so.
I would say that that's obvious. It's refreshing. No, I mean that in a good way. You are proud of those. And-
Yeah.
And, it's a partnership with the community. They're proud of the product.
Right.
And you're proud of how it got there, and
Uh-huh.
it's a win-win.
And when I see people using the project, like Town of Gates, where they enclosed all their shelters, and they rent them and they make revenues off of them, I mean, they didn't have that, Or when we get on the thruway, we drive past Pembroke, and the Yancey Fancy Cheese Company is on a industrial road where I got money for the water and sewer, so that's how that started. And now there's other things going up there around it. So,
I'm very impressed with the palatial bathroom at the mall.
Aren't you?
I don't know,
it was great, yeah.
In fact, you've never visited, but now you're going to, right?
Sounds like a movie theater. Well, Jenny, any comments or questions, or?
Well, just a few things. you said that, how do you charge, in like percentage or hourly or,
No,
or
just
by-
as a
per
monthly,
contract,
a
or-
monthly charge. So it depends on the size of the client. They don't all pay the same. So,
We'll get into that.
yeah.
Like I said, tonight was more about, and we didn't really get into that with the Final Four either. Tonight's not the,
No, one of the things that I really like about this approach, and it was something that came out of the think tank, as you called it, is that, the process so far has been, all right, a project comes up, we know we need to do it, let's go search for some money, but we're really not doing things proactively, as in there's a wish list of all our department heads, of
Right.
things that they would like to do, and they can't possibly be aware of any financial assistance and all the grants that are out there. So we felt it was important for a multifaceted approach to this, so that they could report some of the things that they need, and somebody else goes out to look for those grants, because they know what's available, rather than just piecemealing it. So
Right.
that's why I really do like this approach.
Too bad you aren't starting sooner, because they're gonna miss invasive species,
I know.
Yeah,
Oh, there's always another one coming down the pike.
probably, next year,
don't
maybe.
know.
No, that one didn't come up it only came up like maybe every other year. Some of them don't come up every year, but
No, I meant the invasive species.
that's what I'm talking
There's
about.
an-
Oh, the
there's always
species,
another
there'll
one,
always
yes.
be species, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Bill?
you have water here too, so there's the water species, and then there's the land species,
Right.
and there's all kinds of them, yeah.
Bill, anything?
Not now.
I will say, I hope I haven't upset Bill, because he's from the engineering firm side of the world before,
Oh, I'm
so-
sorry, Bill.
My other life.
We've all had other lives, right?
That's all right, we work with the engineers, we work with all those people you interviewed. I mean, when we need things, they're the ones that give us that stuff. But when we need something else,
How many clients do you have?
right now, about 15 probably,
15?
yeah. So, got some new ones from the state of New York too. We don't know what that's all gonna be about, but we're gonna find out, so.
Great.
Hiring another person too, because I think they'll keep us busy, so.
I think that concludes tonight's workshop, and thank
Okay, well,
you,
thank you
Rick
for
and
your
Jean,
time.
for
Nice
coming
to
in
make
from
the
Buffalo.
Nice to meet you all, thank you,
Yeah.
We
appreciate
will be
it.
in touch, believe me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, gang.
You just have cards if anybody wants to
Sure.
email.
Sure.